Hello, and welcome back to another episode of What Would Helen Say, where therapy time is anytime. In this week's episode, The Burdens of Trauma, my client takes us all the way back to high school, where she gives details about the abusive relationship she endured most of her high school experience. She also talks about how the abuse in this relationship triggered more abuse from her mother at home. If you are or have been a victim of domestic violence or abusive relationships, physically, emotionally, or sexually, you may find this episode very, very triggering. It may be best for you to skip this episode and come back next week. Or if you choose to listen, I truly hope you have a professional or someone available who can help you work through whatever emotions may come up for you as a result of hearing this. If you like the work that I'm doing and you would like to support me, or if you're interested in gaining premium access to detailed notes and skills or early episodes, please click on the Patreon link below for more information. Thank you. All right, so how are you doing this week?
Pretty good. Pretty good. Hasn't been too crazy.
Okay, not too crazy is good.
Yeah.
All right, so I know last time at the end of that session you had asked if we could start exploring, I guess, that high school relationship it is that your mom has thrown in your face multiple times.
Yes.
Okay, so where would you like to start with that?
That I feel like it was so long ago, but I think like in her mind, like I said, that's where everything kind of like went downhill for us. I think that may have like exaggerated what was already wrong, but I don't think that was like the starting point. Um, but I feel that's another way for her to kind of like push it more on me rather than taking accountability for everything before that.
Right.
So that relationship, or I don't even know if you call that a relationship, was like probably the most toxic, traumatic thing ever.
Mm.
Um, I do feel like that I tried to get help away from him through her, but it didn't work out that way. So yeah. So this was about what, ninth grade. I told you at that point I was already kicked out of her house. I was living with my grandparents. So I believe I probably first started talking to him. I want to say it was cold, so it had to be between like December or January. Um, at first everything was fine. Um, we had like a block party around where my mother lives because she lived exactly where he used to live, like in the same complex area. And I think that was her first time meeting him. At that moment, she said she liked him. Everything was fine. Then I want to say it could have been probably into my sophomore year of high school. I found out I was pregnant. So, again, I wasn't living with her. You know, we never had conversation about like any of that kind of stuff or anything like that. That was like super taboo in my household to ever even bring anything up. So at this point, I'm like, okay, my only option would be just to terminate the pregnancy. Like that would just be it for me. Most of the places that I called, you know, you gotta have insurance. I couldn't get my hold on my insurance cards or social because my mother had everything. And I'm like, I don't know how to ask her for it without telling her, you know, what I need it for. I tried saying that I needed it for, I think, like a job interview or something. We did need our social, not the medical card, though. But she still wouldn't give it to me. And then she told me to come over her house one day. I came over. I ended up getting it myself because it was like on top of her dresser. So I just grabbed it. Um, one of my aunts, my dad's sister, I told her when she was going to go with me. We set the appointment and everything, and I was going to go that morning, but instead I stayed at my mom's house the night before school, yeah. And I don't know, someone ended up telling her, so I couldn't even go to school that day, yeah. So she found out the day that I was going to terminate it. Yeah. Um, so it's a whole big thing. Just a whole bunch of yelling and cursing and all that. Um, she wanted to get him arrested. She cursed his mom out. She cursed his dad out. Um, and what else? We ended up going, and I feel like ever since then, like she kind of like throw that in my face, like, oh well, I'm the reason, you're successful or whatever because I stopped you from having that baby. And I'm like, it was already going to happen. Like, I already knew in my mind that that's what I was going to do.
Right.
It was going to happen with or without you. You just so happen to find out during the process. But, at that point, I was kind of like over the relationship. I was just like completely, because he was just horrible. It was like a whole bunch of abuse and like stalking. Like, it was just a lot. At that point, he had gotten kicked out of the high school that we were going to, but he would still constantly come around there for lunchtime. So it's like he would follow me everywhere I would go. There would be like us fighting in the middle of the street. It was just really, really bad. Yeah, really bad. So I kind of started to like separate myself from my friends because I didn't want anything to happen to them. I stopped going out for lunch. I would just go home. Just anything that I would do to like kind of separate myself from him, especially after terminating the pregnancy and everything. I was just like, that's it. Um, I moved back with my grandparents, and I remember like he would just pop up in the middle of the night, like at that house. Like, yeah. Um, he knew that he couldn't like come inside or anything, so he would just like pop up sometimes. Like the phone would ring at odd times of the night. Like anything that he could do to make the situation like worse for me, he would do it. So at night, I started to like take the battery out of the phone. Like I don't even want the phone to ring. But my mother had already convinced my grandparents that I'm taking the battery out the phone because I speak to him and then I hang up or whatever she was trying to convince him. I'm just like, no, that's not the case. Try to explain it, didn't work. My room, we lived on the second floor of a two-family house, and he would literally like climb up on the side of the gate like to get to my window. Like it was bad. And I always slept with my window open. Yeah. So it would be times like I would literally roll over in the middle of the night and he's literally like in my face. Like, yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah. I talked to one of my uncles and I tried to explain it to him, and he's like, oh, your mother said that you still messing with him, so I'm not getting involved in it. And I'm just like, oh my god, like I'm really, really not. Like nobody's trying to listen to me. My grandparents at that point, they was just like, like they was over it too. My mother had convinced my grandfather that I was still like chasing this boy, as she would say. I'm just like, okay, whatever. So I had to go back to her house. They felt like it was safer for me to be there. I felt like it was worse because now, like I said, he lives in the same complex, so I have to see him every day. So she would purposely drive by him every day just so I can look at him, and I'm just like, or she would like park the car like where all him and his friends would sit just so she can go into that store. And there's a million stores that she can go into, but she would always go into that store purposely just to make it worse. And I'm just like, it's annoying. Or at that point, like I said, the relationship was over, but he was still like kind of obsessed, I would say. But he had already moved on. It's like at this point I can't move on because he's still going around telling people that we're together. So guys that would want to talk to me, they're scared. They're terrified of him. Scared of the people that he like hang with. He fought one guy, knocked him out during school. Like it was bad. So I'm like, she sees and she knows all of this that's going on because she said somebody was telling her everything. And I'm just like, if you see all this, why are you not listening to anything that I'm saying? So she would like I said, purposely like drive by him or park her car in front of him, be like, "Oh, look, he with that girl right there, and you still being stupid." And I'm like, "What? Like, I don't care. I'm literally over here terrified at this point." Um, and like I said, like she would like say things about him around the neighborhood, and instead of him saying things to her, he would say things to me. So that just exaggerated it even more. Um, I started to like I didn't even want to have a cell phone anymore. People like different friends that of course are no longer my friends now would like give out my number to him every time I changed it.
What?
Yeah, he would like send threats, send pictures of like guns and everything. Like, oh, this is what I'm gonna do to your family. So I'm like, yeah. So sometimes I'm like, okay, maybe if I just hold a conversation with him that would like protect everybody, nobody's gonna get hurt. He won't, threaten nobody. He won't be outside my grandparents' house. And he knew that I wasn't living there anymore, like I said, because I would be more with my mother in the car, so he would see that. And he would send me pictures like of him outside my grandmother's house at night, like, oh, you're not there right now, blah blah blah. I know your grandmother in the house by herself, and so it's like I would have to keep all of these things. And it's like, oh, if you go to the cops, this and this is gonna happen. I'm just like, at that time, I believed it. That was the first time I've ever encountered anything or anybody like that.
Right.
And during that time, there was a lot going on throughout the neighborhood where it would be different fights of different like gangs or different neighborhoods. There was a lot of killing going on at that time, so it's like I literally believed everything that he would say. So he then got like a fake tattoo of my name super big across his arm and posted it on social media. So I'm like, at this point, I'm like, you're really insane. Like, so I didn't go outside for lunch that day. I stayed in the building, and people were coming up to me like, oh, your mother said when she see you, she gonna beat you up. And I'm like, what? Like, how did you even talk to my mother? Like, what are you talking about? And that's exactly what happened once I got home. She was like, oh, well, because I had commented on the post, and I'm like, you need to take this down. Like, it's not even funny. She said, she's like, oh, I saw you laughing at the post because you think it's so funny. You made him go and get a tattoo of your name. And yeah, she basically put her hands on me that day. And then called him over. Yeah, I had scratches and everything on my face. My lip was busted. And she called him, well, the cousin that I told you that would always tell my mother about herself, she called him over and she was like, you need to tell her, like, why did you do that, blah, 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 because you causing problems. He came over, they sat in front of the door. They could have had a conversation without me. She wanted to call me outside just so he can look at me. And she was like, every time you do something or say something to her, this is exactly what's going to happen to her. This is what you're going to see.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So, of course, that made it worse because he thinks this is hilarious. Now he's going around telling everybody. So I didn't want to go to my other grandparents' house anymore. I didn't want to be at my mother's house. I barely wanted to be in school. I'm just like, I'm so over it. And then, yeah, that was around my junior year. Senior year, no. In between that, someone at the school had called DIFUS, like I said, because I came in with all those scratches and everything. And, they know me as, straight A, not into anything like that. Like, if it ever came down to it, like, of course I'm going to defend myself, but they know I'm not out here starting problems, and I'm never walking in around anyone with scratches or anything on my face. Like, that's not going to happen. So, someone in the school, I don't know who, somebody called DIFUS, though. And I remember them coming over to the house or whatever, to my mother's house, and they were like, we need to see your arms and legs and everything, and she would not leave out of that room, like, whatsoever. The caseworker was like, could you pull your pants, like, down a little so I could see, like, your thighs or whatever, and she was like, no. She tried to say something, like, they were, like, invading my privacy or something, like, oh, you can't look down there, blah, 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 blah. But those where most of my bruises were.
Right.
So I was just like, okay, another almost escape is basically canceled again. Um, and for that, once they had left, they ended up returning the next day. And I remember seeing the lady, she came to the door like with the clipboard and everything, and I'm like, she's like, oh, open the door, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, my mother's not here. Whatever, talking to the lady through the window. Like, she's not here. She's like, okay, fine. Then I told my mother, like when she came back, I'm like, listen, like they came here, blah, blah, blah. She lifted up the window shade and the window and literally like beat me so everyone outside can see it in the parking lot, and he's outside in the parking lot too. And it's like, oh, you think you slick, you keep calling them, because why would you even go and answer them?
Oh my goodness.
I'm like, I see a lady with a clipboard. I don't know who it is. Like, I figured it out afterwards, but I'm like, I didn't know at that point, like, intentionally. She's like, oh, why would you tell them I'm not here? I'm like, because you weren't here. Like, I didn't know what else was I supposed to do. These are, like, just a bunch of things. And then I started to go back around to, like, my father's side, like with my grandmother over there, and I thought that everything was returning back to normal, happy again, everything is cool. I have friends, like, where my grandmother lived, so we were fine up there. I wouldn't go outside or anything, or any of my school friends, they would come up there. Like, my grandmother didn't care, like, if I had company or whatever. We had fun. And then one day specifically, I remember he showed up there. It was him and his brother, and I'm just like, most people know, like, from the neighborhood, if you see them together, is usually not good. Especially the brother. So at that point, my grandmother had, like, a room that was, like, outside of her apartment, but it was, like, in the hall or whatever. So I was like, okay, I don't want to be in there by myself, but I don't want him inside my grandmother's house either. Mm-hmm. So it was, the house was weird. It was like I want to say 2-family, but the downstairs door, it will always stay open up until, like, we go to bed or whatever. My grandmother always kept her door open too. But once I saw them, I tried to run upstairs, to the room or whatever. But I'm like, okay, whatever it is, like, whatever you want, like, just don't get loud, like, don't do anything to anybody in that house, like, do not touch my grandmother. Like, I didn't know what to do. His brother, like I said, he just knows nothing good. So he was able to convince the brother to leave, but I'm like, I don't know where his brother, if he's hiding outside, if he's outside in the car. Like, I didn't know what was gonna happen. So he told me, he's like, okay, if you have sex with me, basically I won't do anything. And I'm just like, no. Like, that's not gonna happen. Ended up happening anyway. He forced himself or whatever. And still, I didn't tell anyone, kept it to myself, didn't say anything. I'm just like, okay, whatever, it's finally over. So I'm like, at this point, I'm not coming back here either. Like, if he's scared of my mother, then I'm just gonna go to my mother's house. Then if I gotta get beat every day, then that's just what it's gonna be. Like, I would rather that than to see him. Now, yeah. We start the new year, senior year off, and everything is going good. We're talking about prom, and then I forget exactly why. My mother was like, oh, I think my little sister had to go to the doctor. We have the same doctor's office. So then once we get there, she said we're going for my sister. We get there, she was like, oh, well, you gotta go in the room and pee on a cup or whatever. I'm like, for what? She was like, oh, because I don't have time for this, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, okay, whatever. Like, I'm super confident, like, everything is fine. Comes to find out, I'm actually pregnant. Exactly. So now, at this point, I didn't know what to say, because I'm like, I can't say what happened without, him getting in trouble, and then I don't know if he's going to retaliate. At this point, his brother, I don't know what they're gonna do, because I said that I wouldn't say anything. So of course, once we get home, she does her normal routine, the beating and everything like that. And I'm just like, I just blurted it out and I told her, I'm like, you don't even realize like what just happened. Like, you don't know what I had to go through or whatever. And she was like, I don't care. That don't have nothing to do with me. You don't know what I went through either.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, right then and there, I just said, okay, it is what it is. So the next day, of course, we go back to the place to terminate yet again another one. And of course, that just made her even more big-headed about the situation. So going forward from that point, every month she would just randomly just take me there. Like, no doctor's appointment, no confirmation. She would just take me there and just be like, oh, because I don't believe you. So when I get there, they're asking like, oh, well, when was your last period? And I can literally say that my last period was yesterday. And they're like, why are you here? My mother want me here. I don't know. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Yeah. So those were like the most like major ones, I would say, to me. A bunch of smaller things in between, but those were like the biggest. And I feel like she thinks that in her mind, that is where everything went bad. And I'm just like, you don't even realize the things that I was holding back, because I'm thinking that I'm protecting everybody. I'm thinking that I'm saving, things from happening to people. Because like I said, during that time, it was a crazy time. Like, so many people that were like involved in different gangs, different neighborhoods, and like he was one of them. But it was like you would literally be sitting next to these people in class on Monday, and then by Tuesday they're already dead because of a shootout that just happened after school in front of the school. So it was like, if somebody said that they were going to do something during that time period, they were actually going to do it. And if they didn't do it, they were going to have somebody else do it. Yeah. So I'm just like, yeah, she didn't really understand that. She didn't really care to understand that. Like, I even showed her the text message of the pictures and stuff that he would send me with all the guns or whatever. And she just swore like we made that up just to pull one over on her, whatever she said. I'm just like, okay.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Like, I just remember at one point, I'm like, that's it, like, I'm done. I sat in my room, because I sat in my room at my grandparents' house, so I went there after school one day because I had to go there. I literally couldn't go anywhere out, like, with my friends or anything. Any outside activities I was not included in because I couldn't go there. I couldn't go to any parties because she thought that I would be with him. Couldn't date because she thought that I was lying and I would be with him. I was on the cheerleading team. I had to quit because she thought that I was lying about practice and I would go and be with him. I almost couldn't go to my senior prom, but she let me go. Junior prom, I almost didn't make it either. She waited until the day before. It was probably about 6 o'clock. The day before, and she was like, oh, what you wearing to prom tomorrow? I'm like, I don't have a job. Like,
Right. Did you buy me something? Because that's the only way this is happening.
and she was like, oh, you better figure it out. You better go across the street and ask your aunt. This is one of my aunts, my dad's sister. She ended up moving into the complex. So I literally ran across the street to her house, and she was like, do you want to go? And I'm like, well, yeah, I've been wanting to go, but she told me I couldn't. So she was like, all right, tell your mother to come and pick me up in the morning, and I guess we'll go and we'll figure it out. And we figured it out, but, it was just like little things like that that she would do. Same thing for senior prom. She almost did something like that, but, yeah, at one point, like I said, I just remember that I'm just like, you know what, that's it. I'm like, I'd rather kill myself before he killed me, or before she did. So I had like a little book, and I just remember just writing notes like to everybody, like, basically my last words or whatever, because I'm like, that's just gonna be it today. Yeah. So I think I don't know what happened or why I stopped. I know somebody ended up calling or someone came over, something like that. But I remember I kept them in like a folder and I just like stuffed them in a drawer or whatever. And I'm
Was
just
it
like,
pills?
no, I had a knife. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm glad you're still here.
Yeah. That's I always like think about that, like it really could have been, like my last or whatever, but I can't remember like who called me or who came over that day. It was either the doorbell or the phone. I can't remember which one. But yeah, I was like, that's it because I'm literally I feel like I'm dying anyway. So it's like,
Okay.
what's the purpose? And during that one of our arguments, I even said that to her, and I'm like, and she's like, well, go ahead if that's what you want to do. I'm like, okay, well, that's fine.
Okay. No, hey, what's going on to make you feel this way? Nothing. Just, all right, just do what you got to do.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this started in freshman year.
Mhm.
We're talking about all the way up to senior prom. Like, when did this end? How did it end?
For me, it didn't really end because afterward I'm like, I need to go as far as possible away to school. My senior year also, my mother ended up having a stroke. Of course, she blamed that on me. I gave her the stroke or whatever, and I'm just like, okay. Um, I started telling everybody. Um, so I'm like, I need to go really far away from school. I need to get away from him. I want to get away from her. But the scholarships didn't cover everything, and of course, my grandfather he wanted to pay for the whole thing. So there was like a leftover balance of like 14 or 15,000. And I'm just looking at him. I'm like, I can't do that. Like, I can't let you like pay for that or whatever. Um, and then I'm like, too, I didn't really want to leave my grandparents like going that far. I was going to Atlanta. I got into all these schools and I'm just like, I'm ready to go, but I couldn't leave. Of course, my mother thinks that I stayed for her. She's kept telling people that like, oh, since I had this stroke, she wants to stay for me to just in case anything happens. I'm like, no, not even close. Like, not even close. I just know that all the financials is gonna fall back on my grandfather. And I didn't want that. Um, I ended up staying, in the state or whatever, but thought everything was cool. Everything was fine. He found out where I was going. Yeah. Come to find out, I think he had like a friend that goes there, or the friend. No. He had a guy from his neighborhood that pledged there. They had a Meet the Greeks talent show, and he showed up. I didn't even go to the Meet the Greeks because I didn't even know about the event at all. I literally was sitting in front of the freshman dorms, just sitting outside. It was quiet, it was chill, and I just see his face pop up. I'm like, you cannot be serious.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Um, from there, I got a call from my grandmother, and she was like, oh, I don't know what your problem is, but your mother said that you still dealing with that boy. You keep inviting him over there. I'm just like, not again.
Right.
Not again. Now, this is my freshman year in college. That calmed down a bit or whatever, and I told him, like, like, you literally have to stop. At this point, I'm gonna have to press charges. Like, and he's like, oh, well, I told you what I'm gonna do. And I'm just like, at that point, I'm like, I don't care. You can do whatever you want to do. If you feel like that's what you want to do to her, then go ahead and do it. Be my guest. I don't care. Um, Going to my sophomore year, that's when I first met Jay, I want to say, around probably like February or whatever of my sophomore year. And me and Jay had hang out or whatever. I think we went out on a date. But he found out, the guy found out, and he tried to lie and was like, oh yeah, I was just with her that day, blah, blah, blah. So in Jay's mind, he was like, how? Like, how did that happen? Like, there had to be more hours in a day because that would be impossible. So he tried to make up an even bigger rumor. Jay's telling me this on the phone, and then I'm like, a random number is calling me. I ended up having to block 1,000 numbers he was called from anybody's phone that he can get his hands on. So I get a random call, and I'm just like, I'm telling Jay, I'm like, I'll call you back. I don't know who this is. He's yelling. The guy is yelling on my phone, like, oh yeah, right. I was just there yesterday. I'm like, no. So he has his friend in the background vouching for him. I'm like, yeah, I brought you up there. I'm like, no, you did not. So he started even nastier rumor, like, oh yeah, we had sex and you burnt me. I'm like, what?
This dude is crazy.
Yeah, exactly. So now I'm telling Jay this, and Jay at first he was like, he had me believe in him. I'm like, yeah, he won't make anyone believe him. He reminds me much like my mother. Whatever he can say, I'm talking, if it comes down to it, he will lie on his grandmother. He literally, his best friend died right in front of him. He will lie on his best friend. Like, yeah, on whatever, I'm telling the truth. And I'm just like, no, you're not. I know when he's lying, but nobody else does. So everybody else is believing everything that he's saying. So I had a conversation with Jay, like, later on that day, and I'm, explaining to him what that phone call was about. And he was like, oh, wow, that's crazy, because that's what I'm hearing around here back in the city, because that's what he's going around telling people.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. It would still be like random. It slowed down afterwards, because Jay intervened or whatever, and he was like, he told Jay, like, oh yeah, I heard you messing with her. So he's like, yeah. And he was like, oh, I'm gonna get her back. So he's like, okay, try it. I dare you to do it. And I went like probably a whole year without hearing from him completely. And then every now and then it will be like, oh, a message passed to somebody, like, oh, such and such to tell you hi. I'm like, I don't care. But like, yeah, he's like really, really crazy. Reaching out to different family members. Like even like my younger cousins, writing, messaging them on social media, like, oh, could you tell her I said hi? Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Wow. I have lost count of the number of traumas that are in that.
Yeah. And meanwhile, I would think, during this time, my mother would step in and try to help me out. Or, like I said, we never had like a relationship like that, but I was hoping that this is the time that, it would be needed. At this time, my father was in prison, so I would speak to him, like, over the phone or through letters, and I tried not to say much to him because I didn't want to, of course, upset him, because there's nothing that he can do from where he is. But I would talk to him, and, he would try to talk to me the best he could about it, and, try to, like, calm me down, and, I guess try to steer me in the right direction of just letting me know, like, it'll get better, and blah, 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 blah. And I've always felt that our relationship has been stronger than me and my mom's. But that time, I'm like, I'm leaning on someone who's physically not here, and he's been more supportive throughout the whole situation than you.
Sad.
Yeah. So she would say things, and still to this day, she's like, there's some kind of jealousy there of like, oh, he's never been there for you, he's never bought you anything or did anything, and you swear he's the better parent. And I'm like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. Because there's so much more to it than just being a physical body in the same environment.
Right. That's her problem. And I'm like, she loves to say that, like, oh, he never done anything, and blah, 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 blah. And it's just like, I don't look at him to do anything. If I need him to, he will. If he's not around to, his sisters will. And that is her issue with them, because it's like, oh, y'all are stepping in, basically, doing everything that he should be doing. But it's like, then if they weren't, then that would be an issue too.
Mm-hmm. Um, okay. So it sounds like the guy has just faded into the background, but is still in the background.
Yeah, as of, and I didn't even tell Jay in February. The guy's in jail now. In
Good.
February, I got a message, right? I had a message from someone, and he was like, oh, they were on a call with their friend who's in the same jail. He's like, oh yeah, he hopped in the background, was like, oh, give me B's number, I need to call her. And he was like, no, why would I, like, don't play with me like that.
Right.
Yeah. But I'm like, even, this is February of this year, so just a few months ago.
Mm,
Like, why?
exactly. Why?
I don't know. I don't get it.
I don't either, because even the standard for, sociopaths,
Yeah.
abusers, manipulators, they kind of move on to the next person at some point in time. But
That's what he's moved on. He has kids and everything. So I don't understand.
yet his obsession with you is like mind-boggling.
Yeah. It's very scary.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So, oh my gosh. So there's got to be some part of you that's like, okay, if he eventually gets out of jail, do you have to worry about crazy popping up somewhere and
Exactly.
saying something to your kids? And like,
This is very, very crazy. As of now, the last time I checked, he'll be in there for a long time. I hope that he stays even longer than what he's supposed to. But it's just like, you have kids of your own. Like, at what point does it stop? And you have a daughter at that. So at what point will you think in your mind, this is going to circle back to your kid? And I've told him in the past, it's just like, there's plenty of things that he said to me, or plenty of things that he's told me that I could have easily repeated to the next person. And it's just like, I told him before, like, I spared your life so many times, especially seeing that you have a kid. At that time he had one child. Like, being that you have a kid, I spared your life many times, only because I know what I know what it's like to, not have my father in a physical form. So I'm trying to be nice, so let's just keep it that way. But yeah, he still doesn't get it. Like, I don't understand.
okay. There's a lot of emotion and all of
Yes.
this. I'm kind of lost right now, honestly, 'cause I don't even know where to start. I'm
Me either. And I feel like that was like the shorter version of everything.
Well, I know you condensed it because there were no details. It was like really hit the highlights, and here's, we're going to skip over this for a couple of months and we're going to go into this. Like, I get it. So, okay. Do you still have flashbacks, intrusive thoughts, things like that that take you back to those times?
Um, I never do until I talk to my mom.
Huh.
Until like she like says his name, or she tries to reference the pregnancies. Like, she did that when I was welcoming my first child, and I'm just like, I
That's so inappropriate.
yeah. I think that was like our big blow up when I was pregnant. She's like, um, oh, if it wasn't for me, you would have 3 kids instead of 1. And I'm just like, In my mind, I've already erased those first two because that was never my intention. But before my first daughter, I had a miscarriage. And I told her about that pregnancy, and then I told her about the miscarriage, and she was so distraught. And she's like, "Oh, is this something that I did wrong?" And blah blah blah. Blah. I'm just like, it's not even about you. Like,
Right.
whatever. But yeah, when she made that comment, I'm just like, why even go back to that?
Right.
But like little comments like that, or like I said, when we're talking about the wedding, she goes back to like, "Oh, I'm so happy for you. He's a completely different guy from," and I'm just like, you don't even know how many people I talk to in between. Like, you just going off what you think you know. I never introduced anybody else because you already had that thought in your mind. So it's like, what's the point? And even when I would be talking to other people, or I had another boyfriend or any other boyfriend, she would still be referencing him at all times, not even knowing that there's somebody completely new.
Okay. So in this moment, what is really, really, really standing out to me is just the degree of betrayal from your mom.
Yeah.
Just like she did not show up as a mom at any point in time.
Nope. And then she just, anytime something would happen or whatever, her thing would be, "Oh, I'm just gonna embarrass you. I'm gonna embarrass you. I'm gonna embarrass you." I'm like, okay, whatever. We're past that embarrassment phase. Like, I really don't care. But she will always reference how, oh, because I had a, how did she say it? Like, I was a teen mom or whatever. Like, this happened to me during that age or whatever. So I'm not letting that happen to you. And it's just like, it happened.
Right. It happened, and she did have the power to intervene prior to, but she only exacerbated the problem
Right.
and made everyone, well, let everyone know that she wasn't going to protect you.
Like, everybody knew at that point. Like, it was just like a joke at that point.
Oh my goodness. I'm really trying to find the words.
Yeah.
And you still talk to her?
Yeah, a lot of people ask me that, even family. Like, I think at that point that it definitely showed like separation of different family members. You had people that were basically all whoever she convinced, and then you had my side. So it's like, still from then, I guess, some people, especially my dad's side, like, they want nothing to do with her. They try to avoid her at all costs. Um, they would try to say, like, come up here, just to get away from her. But like I said, ever since that situation, I'm just like, I didn't tell them, but I'm like, I'm okay. Like, I don't want to come up there. And they thought that they were doing, the best that they could. And I think at that time there was really nothing more that they could do. But yeah, definitely showed a lot of separation.
Right. And the shameful thing is, you're the child in this situation. Like, everybody's supposed to be on your side.
Yep. Nope.
You're the minor. You're the one who needs the protection. You're the one who needs the intervention of, hey, you need to leave her alone. Like, there's like complete abandonment of you
Mm-hmm.
and literally throwing you to the wolves.
Basically, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yep. There was only, I want to say, like I said, I had like a couple of cousins and a couple of uncles, but like I said, and I told him, you need to be alive for your kid because that was the last resort. That was the last option. because that's exactly what they wanted to do once they heard about, all what was going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm just like, even then, I knew that I definitely could have made certain phone calls, but I'm like, why should, anyone else have to risk their life for me?
Okay. I'm not advocating for violence. I'm not advocating for violence. But oh my gosh, you deserve to have somebody stand up for you. And you deserve to have somebody to be like, no more. And you are not allowed to treat her this way. And I'm going to stand in between and I'm going to protect her. You absolutely deserve that.
Yep. I mean, I watched him get beat up, but it had nothing to do with me. That was just like retaliation stuff back then. But I enjoyed it, and everyone thought like like, oh, because at this point he was still like trying to convince people that we were together. So you had some people looking at me funny, like, help him, or why you not? I'm like, no, for what? This is entertaining to me. I didn't care. Just like, some people were scared, like if they would see me, walking down the school hallways, because like I said, there was a lot going on. So they would think like, oh, like I'm after the girls or the girlfriends or the sisters of the guys, and I'm just like, I'm not after y'all. I don't care. That was fun for me to watch. Just like it was fun for you, it was fun for me. It was amazing to see. Like, I loved it. I loved every part of it. It didn't bother me at all.
Right. In your head, I'm sure you're like, oh, that hit is for this, and that hit is for this, and that's.
And that's where I kind of got a little bit, I want to say, a confidence boost too, because I'm like, you can't fight.
Mm.
And it's just like, exactly. And I think, yeah, after I saw that and he tried to put his hands on me in the store during lunchtime, I'm like, okay. Okay. Yeah, I beat him up in the store.
Good for you.
Yep. Yeah. That felt good.
Awesome. I'm proud of you.
Yep.
Okay. So at least there's some sense of empowerment in terms of that dynamic. I know it's not the security that you want of knowing you are finally free of this and there's no chance of it coming back. But at least there's a sense of empowerment that, okay, he talks a lot, but he doesn't have much to back it up.
At all. At all. And that's what, like I said, like a lot of confidence started coming back, because then other guys even started to see like, oh, this is who I was scared of? This is who he was scared of? Nobody was scared anymore.
So we have a few minutes left. I'm going to mention this. Obviously, we're not getting into it right now. But whenever I encounter people who had traumas take place in their life, I like to describe it as, if you think of your life as like a body of water, doesn't matter what size it is, and each trauma is like somebody throwing a rock into that body of water. Well, you have the point of entry of the rock into the water, but then you have the ripple effects. That it disturbs the rest of the body of water. So even when people tell me, like, hey, I'm over the actual event that happened, you may not always be over all the other ways it's affected your life because it happened.
Yeah.
So that's what I want you to kind of think about, in between now and our next session. Can you identify any ripple effects, any ways in which these events have totally restructured aspects of your life? Now, because you were so young when all of this got started, it may be difficult to differentiate.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of developmental stuff that was happening at this time. So it's hard to say how you may have developed differently if it hadn't been present. But if you can identify certain things that you feel are odd or you're not comfortable with it or you would like for it to be different, then I want you to write it down and let's start talking about it and figure out how we can resolve those things.
Got it.
So that was a lot today.
A lot.
How are you feeling having brought all of this stuff up?
It definitely brings back a lot of, I want to say, flashbacks, about a lot of it, but it isn't like hurting. It's more like just questioning of what could have been different or what I could have did different back then. But it would be times where I would like think about this and I would like literally be like in tears. But I don't even have like any tears for the situation anymore. So it feels good to be able to talk about this or talk about him without being brought to tears or without like yelling and being angry or whatever. So,
Okay. So here's what I want to say. I know you can't help the flashbacks, the different thoughts and the questions that may pop up. You are not to blame. I don't want you to look at this in terms of, well, what could I have done differently? You were not the disturbed individual who was threatening you and stalking you and hurting you, beating you up.
yeah.
You didn't do that stuff to yourself. And if you had the power to control other people, you would have done it. So it's not a matter of you could have done something differently because you couldn't control what other people were doing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's coming back to this. And I don't remember if I said this to you before. People are hardwired for survival. At any given moment, you make the choices that you believe are best for you, given your resources, your knowledge, and your abilities. That's it. At any given moment, you do indeed make the best choices at that time.
Yep.
Okay?
Yes.
So that's our time.
Okay.
After this, I want you to try to do something nice for you. Even if it's just go in your kitchen and have a bowl of ice cream. This is an emotional wound. So I want you to put a Band-Aid on it. I want you to take care of you. And don't beat yourself up, okay?
Okay.
All right.
All right then.
Take care.
Okay, talk to you next time.
All right.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for having tuned in to another episode of What Would Helen Say, where therapy time is anytime. If you or someone you know is or has been a victim of domestic violence, please know that there is help available. The National Domestic Violence Hotline number is 1-800 799 7233. Please reach out. I hope you come back next week as my client enters her last individual session as part of this podcast, and we talk about knowing when to let go of relationships. If you like the work that I'm doing, you would like to donate, contribute, you're interested in gaining premium access to detailed notes about the different skills and techniques that I provide, please click on the Patreon link below for more information. Thank you.